So after that, what drove you into creating? What kind of pushed you in saying, okay, I'm gonna start doing comic books, going from a fan to that kind of like creator level?
So since I went to film school, I just thought I was going to have a traditional film career. Come out, I would have the 3 picture deal, and just make magic happen. And this is in the late '90s when a no budget film was still just ridiculously expensive. And I went to USC, and my career going through USC was actually pretty bright. I was
Mm-hmm.
doing well, and I thought this is going to be amazing. I was one of 4 people chosen to do a senior thesis film, which is like a big deal at USC. And then I just completely failed. And my senior thesis was an abomination. It was so bad, you literally can't imagine. It was so bad, in fact, that I stole the master because I never wanted anyone to see it. And it just really brought home that I wasn't good. And at the time, I thought that I wasn't good forever. And I didn't think that there was any way to get better. I thought that talent and intelligence were fixed traits and that was just it. And so, what I had unfortunately discovered in film school was that I was never going to make it. And that was soul crushing. But to get my way out of that flirtation with depression, I started reading about the brain plasticity, whether the brain could change. And at the time, it was actually a highly debated topic as to whether or not you could learn something as an adult. And I just thought, you know what? I choose to believe that you can. I choose to believe you can get good at something. So even though I wasn't a good filmmaker yet, I could get good. And so I started teaching filmmaking. And while I was teaching, I met these 2 entrepreneurs. And this is sort of messing with the timeline, but just to make it like really simple, I end up making one of my screenplays is turned into a feature film.
Oh wow.
And I was mortified with how it turned out. And I just thought, oh, wow, this is really soul crushing. And I get now why people go, I love movies and I want to be a part of this, but the realities of the business are such that I just can't emotionally deal with it. And so these 2 guys that I had met, entrepreneurs, very successful, they said, look, you're coming to the world with your hand out. And if you want to control the art, you have to control the resources. And I thought, wow, that's really smart. And they said, so why don't you come with us and get rich? And I thought, that sounds amazing. Let's do that. And we all thought that it would take about 18 months. And this is in, the early 2000s. So tech is where you make all your money. They were starting a tech company. And so they hired me as a copywriter. And they said, look, don't think of yourself as a copywriter. You can have any job that you want in this company. You could even earn equity in this company through blood, sweat, and tears. And so I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to go all in. And I'm going to get rich. And I'm going to, do what I need to do to go start my studio. And so the 18-month clock goes by. I think another 18 months. And I just kept saying that for about 6.5 years and finally realized that this is going to take a lot longer. And it did. It took about 15 years and through multiple companies, but we finally did it. And so our last company, which was a nutrition company called Quest Nutrition, we took that from not existing to being valued at over $1 billion. And so I exited the company 2 years ago and started in earnest to build the studio. And because for the hit ratio reasons that I was saying, I knew I had enough capital that we could either go co-finance a $100 million film, but if it tanks, we lose everything.
Yep.
Or I could do something like comics where it's an amazing art form. You can build a community around a property. You can try out ideas. You can be crazier in your ideas, which is one of the things people don't talk a lot about in comics, about how like crazy and broad and all the what if scenarios that you can do, which I really love. And so creatively, I just thought it was really interesting. I'm also hyper visual, so working with visual artists is something that really, really inspired me. And I could fail a lot and afford to fail. And so that we could build up this library of IP, build communities, and see through the communities which one really popped off. And then, put all of our energy behind whatever was actually working.
That's the smartest way to look at it. Is that in comic books, it's no one gets comic book and their first thing is their amazing run on Batman. You're not going to have that Frank Miller Daredevil run right out of the gate. So it's really interesting that you have that approach of like, okay, I know this is going to take time and I'm willing to put in the time, I'm willing to put in the work and get there. And I think that's really, really fascinating.
Yeah, we were talking before we started rolling cameras that one thing that the industry, it's really exciting because it's happening right now, and there's a lot of people that are coming to it now with this, which is, hey, the industry doesn't have a lot of business acumen.
No.
Like there's a lot of passion, which is amazing, and it's part of what makes it so fun to work with such just unimaginably talented creators. But they've been treated as being outsiders in the system now for a very long time. And then the people running the companies oftentimes don't have deep entrepreneurial backgrounds. So there's a lot of weirdness in the system from a just economic, from a what I call emotional safety standpoint, things that are really important in a traditional company about the way that you make people feel included, a part of something, that there's some sense of job security, that they have health care, things like that. That's all missing from the industry. And so coming in and being able to apply some of those business principles is I hope going to be a winning formula, but certainly something that I'm super excited to be doing.
Yeah, it's crazy because I've talked to a lot of different people about how comics have kind of gone through these ups and downs, like the 90s image boom, and so many other companies have gone through these crazy things where Marvel was booming and the top company, and then all of a sudden they're filing for bankruptcy.
Right.
And it's you never know in comic books, and I've heard a lot of stories where people have had these like great ideas, but they haven't worked out. So it's really cool to see you kind of have that passion again and wanting to create that safe place for artists, writers, creators to come and be.
And just recognizing that, as much as you may love an idea, it just may not work. And so you have to look at it through the lens of business principles and saying, okay, this is working, this isn't working. Really, so to give you an example of how I approach the problem, so I'm coming into it, I know nothing about comic books from a business standpoint. So I know business in general, sure, but that's very different than actually understanding the industry. So I came in and hired people to work with me as consultants, worked with the former CEO of DC and just said, I want to spend 2 days with you and I want to answer one simple question: why am I going to fail? And that was so educational. And to have somebody with that depth of experience sit you down and for 2 straight days tell you why you're going to fail, and that to me always feels like the right question instead of asking how do I succeed, because all people are going to tell you is like what's worked before, which is not necessarily what's going to work now in this environment, whatever. But the reasons that you failed before are oftentimes ultra instructive and continue to apply. So started with that and just started asking anybody I could get my hands on why I was going to fail. And that's been super useful.